Hi, I'm Tim Belcher. Welcome back to the channel. This is sort of going to be a packed video. This is the second full set of no stitch or no sew leather purses designed from the ground up. There's several videos on my channel about this concept, this way to precisely cut pieces of leather so that they magically, or in this case mathematically, connect together and form a shape, in this case a purse. And a quick shout out to Jimmy Diresta, who hand drew this concept almost 2 years ago. My method uses CAD software to generate these patterns so that they can be cut on a laser or a Cricut or even by hand. And this is a very easy, very approachable project. If you can make acrylic earrings on your laser or leatherette earrings on your Cricut, you could certainly easily make this purse. A couple things before we get into it. I'm going to give one of these away to one of you, so stay tuned to the end of the video to figure out how to enter to win. And in this video, I'm going to make 4 leather purses, a large, a medium, a small, and a clutch. I'm going to use both the laser and the Cricut to do this. However, if you're a Cricut user, there's a much more in-depth video on my channel about making one of these designs on a Cricut. And for these, I've designed all of them to be made on a large laser or a small laser like the glowforge or the Cricut Maker. More on that later. I'm also going to go over this design with a little more depth, go over my model, go over some of the new approach, mostly because I still find this absolutely fascinating. But secondly, if you're going to end up making one of these, I think it helps you to understand how the model was designed so that you can customize it however you want. So this is how I made it. Let's get to the build. One of the most common questions I get is, where do I get my leather? For this project, I chose pre-dyed vegetable tan leather from Weaver Leather online. Now this stuff was expensive, $190 per double shoulder hide in 5 to 6 ounces. And it's 2.1 millimeters thick. In leather, usually you get what you pay for, but let's look at another option. This roll is tooling leather from Hobby Lobby, and it costs less than $40 with a coupon. It's about half the size, and the leather is quite a bit stiffer and rougher than the more expensive leather from Weaver, and you have to finish it yourself, of course. However, I think it's perfectly usable. But for this, I'm going to use this blue jean and brown Italian leather. It's actually a bit soft for my liking. Stiff leather typically holds together much better for this type of design, but this worked out fine. And I'm going to use these different colors and the different panels in the design to make variations in color for the bags. You'll see more of that later. I've got some sizes for my designs here, so I'm going to cut a few panels and get ready to throw them on the laser. I need to cut one panel for the back, which will include the flap, one panel for the front, and one panel for the gusset. I also need just a little extra room on one of those panels so I can cut out a handle. I've mentioned this in other videos, but this is the best way to avoid staining your leather with soot. Simply apply some finish to the leather before you cut. I use a coat or two of leather balm, which is wax-based, and then clean up after the cut is simply done with a damp rag. Before I get to cutting, let me go over the inspiration and some of the design for these patterns. I'm also going to quickly go over my model to show you what's changed, my new approach, and also to give you some sort of sense of why I'm still so intrigued with this type of design. My last models were curvy, more organic. If I were to look for something similar on Amazon, I would say something like this or something like this. For this model, I wanted a more classic design, more square with rounded corners, and for the bag to taper up the side. Here's some I would consider to be in that family, though my actual inspiration was a friend with a small crossbody bag that she liked. So let's jump into Fusion 360 and let me quickly show you how this is designed. As I mentioned, there's a back panel that includes the flap, the front, and a gusset. This time, however, I've made a gusset and a back panel that can be cut in 2 parts. They're joined together using the same exact method. This lets all these designs be cut on smaller lasers like the glowforge as well as the Cricut Maker. The small and the clutch actually naturally fit with no problem. The next big change is that in my first model, the tabs were generated dynamically, meaning if I had 10 inches and wanted 15 tabs, they would just calculate to fill the space. I was able to move all that logic to this little model. Now I can insert this as a component, line it up, and pattern along various paths. I can then combine the shape where I need a tab or subtract a slot where I need it, and because it's fixed width, I'll just use some math to make sure the pattern places the first and last tab on the ends, and the middle ones are spaced out to spread out any extra space along the path in the gaps evenly. The gusset is mathematically designed to taper and match the front and back panels, and then I added a 2-part gusset and a 2-part back panel. These let smaller bed users cut the back panel and gusset in 2 parts, allowing even the medium and the large to be cut on small beds like the glowforge or the Cricut Maker. I actually often use the 2-part gusset myself, even on my large laser, just because it's easier. Okay, let's get to some making. I'll show you one fairly in-depth build and then a few quicker ones. More in-depth instructions will be found in the PDF that come with the patterns. This is the back panel for a medium in brown. I'm going to get my leather flat on the bed with some magnets and first do a monogram engraving on the front flap. Then I'll cut the pattern out. I find on my laser high power with air assist, as fast as possible making the cut in a single pass, and a good exhaust gets me the cleanest results. My settings are 70 power, 35 speed with air, but your settings are going to vary based on your laser. Onto the front panel in that blue jean color. And finally the gusset and a little hand strap in that same blue. The hand strap's actually optional. There are vector files in the pack that are the same design but do not have the holes for the hand strap. I've got my panels in parts. First thing I'm going to do is simply wipe them down with a damp rag, or in this case, an old sock. And this is why we finished the leather before. Cleanup is very easy now. Hardware is a few rivets, 2 D-rings, a clasp, 2 of these strap holders, and later a chain. I'm going to attach the clasp first. I designed these with this specific clasp in mind, but I think there's several versions on Amazon that are the same size. I like this one because it seems to be good quality. I also wanted a locking closure on this to help make carrying the bag by the handle safe. 2 prongs push through the front and then through this little back plate, and then you simply fold them over to secure the lock portion. On the front, the ring is simply unscrewed and screwed back onto the panel. I take a little time to seat the front side in place, pushing from the back side of the leather down into that front plate, and then I will get each screw started just barely and tighten each a little, going back and forth until it's as tight as possible. And now I'll rivet on the D-rings to the gusset. 2 rivets on each side, just making sure that the rivet cap is facing outward. Also, make sure your rivets are the correct size. They should just barely poke out of the 2 layers of leather. For the hand strap, I will bend the leather and put it through the rings, and then use a single rivet to attach each side. And then the hand strap rings simply screw onto the front panel. On really thin leather, these might end up being a little loose. On this 2mm leather, I was able to tighten them down just fine. And here's where the magic happens. Just remember a few rules. The finished side goes over the finished side. Insert the tab at an angle. The flat of the triangle goes through the slot. And then you can grab the tab from the inside, pull the other side through, and simply seat it. Straight lines are very easy. The tabs on the corners are sometimes a bit more difficult to get in position. You sort of have to mold the purse as you go, but overall, this is very, very easy. With the gusset attached to one side, you can start to see the bag take form, and now we'll simply attach the front panel. I wanted to show you one of those corners I was talking about. I'm simply trying to find the best grip to get this tab started, trying to mold the purse a bit to get them to line up. And again, just be a little patient with it. I mentioned this was very soft leather. My preference for this type of design is a bit stiffer, but even so, you can see the bag holding its shape really well. And there you go, we have a bag. It really was that simple. I'm going to quickly add another coat of leather balm, wait a few minutes and buff it to a shine, and then add the chain. This chain was about $8 on Amazon, and the medium size is then complete. This was actually a Valentine's Day present for my wife. She just can't take it until the video's done. Well, we have a couple more to do. I'll try and speed through them for you, but it's nice to see how each compares in size. Let's do the large in a reverse color combination than the medium. I prep and cut the same way. But I will point out that this is a 2-part gusset. While I can cut one long piece, I found a better option in the leather roll to cut the 2-parter. Larger, more tabs, a little bit longer to put together, but I think I still managed to weave this in around 15 minutes. And here's the large. And here's how it compares to the medium. The large assembled is about 9.5 tall by 12 wide, and the medium is about 7 tall by 10 wide. Pretty happy with both. This is the clutch, and this time I'll do the front and back in blue with the gusset and handle brown. Once you've done 1 or 2 of these, you can really crank them out. And fully assembled, the clutch is about 5 inches tall by 10 inches wide. The small, I'm actually going to cut it on the Cricut Maker, and as I mentioned, there's a more in-depth video on my channel, and I'll link it in the description, but the process is relatively the same. I'll place contact paper on the mat, sticky side up, and that gives me a disposable mat. Then I'll put the leather on rough side down, I'll import the SVGs, I'll size them correctly, and cut using the knife blade with settings for tooling leather of my thickness. Pretty straightforward, actually. Remember, the small and the clutch fit naturally on the Maker without worrying about the 2-panel variants. I'll put the leather balm on now while the parts are still flat. And assembly is the same. I think out of all the designs, the clutch and the small are my favorites. My inspiration for this entire design came from a small bag very similar to this one. This one assembled is about 5 tall by 7.5 wide. Well, that's the project done. I'm very happy with it. I think they came out great. All of these designs are available for digital download on my Etsy site. And every bit of hardware you saw in this video, the rivets, the D-rings, the clasps, the chains, they're all linked in the video description, they're linked on the Etsy site, and they're actually linked in a PDF document in the design itself. But remember, all that hardware can be swapped out to anything you like now that you know how the design's made. I want this to actually be a platform for creativity. You can engrave on this, you can make monograms. On the Cricut, you could draw on the leather, you could even customize the shape of the flap or make other modifications to it. I want this to be customized for you, and I also want you to consider adding something like this to your small laser or crafting business. Now, if you made it this far, thanks for watching all the way through. I'm going to give the small or the clutch away to one of you. All you have to do to enter to win is subscribe and leave a comment on this video. Bonus points if you hit that like button as well. In my next video, I'll randomly choose a comment, announce the winner, and ship it off to you. Again, thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.